Hey, welcome everybody to our next J.C. Miller Memorial Lecture. I'm really delighted to see so many of you here in the room, despite the problems with the bridge and also online. And I'm even more delighted to welcome Dr. Indranil Acharya, who is a professor and former head of the Department of English Literature, Language and Cultural Studies at Vidyasagar University in West Bengal in India. Welcome, Indranil. He's also the coordinator of the Center for Translation and Foreign Language Studies at Vidyasagar University. And Dr. Acharya was a Fulbright Nehru Academic and Professional Excellence Fellow from 2024 to 2025, and his host university was the University of Wisconsin in Madison in the USA. And I'm really delighted that also Gudrun Bühnemann, our dear colleague from the same institution, a colleague of Professor Acharya Sen, is here today. Professor Acharya also served as a visiting professor in the Center for History and Art History at the University of East Anglia in Norwich in the UK in 2025. So internationally very well placed and connected. Dr. Acharya is currently engaged in an Indian Council of Social Science major research project. And as part of this project, he's working on the particularly vulnerable tribal groups of West Bengal as a co-project director. And we're hoping very much to establish longer-term cooperations with him in the BCDSS, and have already started talks about that today, which will continue tomorrow. I'm really pleased that this afternoon he will speak to us about sexual slavery and economic dependency, a critical study of the Nachni performers of Eastern India in the context of the Devadasi tradition. Professor Acharya, Indranil, we're looking forward to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Julia Hegewald. It's my privilege to be here in this Bond Center for Dependency and Slavery Studies in connection with the annual J.C. Miller Memorial Lecture. And I'm particularly indebted to the organizers of this talk for inviting me to the city of Bonn, this historic city of Bonn. And it's my first visit to Bonn. And I thoroughly enjoyed the ambience of this wonderful city. And yesterday I had a lot of sun also. And I thoroughly enjoyed walking on the riverside on a very sunny day till 9:30. So that was unthinkable in India. We got so much of sun here. And today I'm really inspired and enthused by this audience, and also people who have joined online. My colleagues are there. So I would like to address all of you, my colleagues, and here are other researchers, students, and friends in general. As you come to know from the title of my presentation, it's about sexual slavery and economic dependency, a critical study of the Nachni performers of Eastern India in the context of the Devadasi tradition. In fact, this is part of our ongoing research that we began way back in 2008-9, when we actually launched a departmental research support scheme under the aegis of the University Grants Commission of India, which was about the documentation, translation, and analysis of the Dalit and Adivasi literature of the Eastern India. And when we also got connected with the larger People's Linguistic Survey of India project, where we came across various marginalized linguistic communities in India. We were the coordinators of the West Bengal chapter, and we also coordinated with the other people who are working in the Eastern and the Northeastern contexts. So this Nachni tradition is part of this larger discourse of Dalitization of certain communities especially the marginalized communities in the eastern part of India, and which took a specific manifestation of the larger discourse of the Devadasi tradition, which is quite immanent in the Indian context, especially in the South Indian context. Now, let us move to the next slide. So I would like to give you the abstract of my talk today. How does the Devadasi tradition stay active despite being declared illegal in India? So this is a major question which we shall definitely address in today's talk. And we shall also explore the inescapable dependency of the Devadasis on the temple priests, patrons, or the influential members of their own community. So it's a story of victimization within the larger patriarchal setup, and where the vicious trope of patriarchy operates at different levels and creates its own set of marginalization for the Devadasis in different regions with different manifestations. And I have mentioned certain states here like West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and others. And I will be talking about the Bengal situation with the specific manifestation of the Nachnis. And I would like to focus on this victimological perspective in the existing legislations, policies, and literary representations with reference to the Nachni tradition, which is largely unrepresented in the critical discourse of performance studies and also of other branches of cultural studies. Now, as you know that this is quite well known, the etymological meaning of the word Devadasi, where we can use the meaning of the word Dasi as servant, as also to a certain extent a slave, because the Das from Das, it comes Dasi, the feminine form, where the idea of enslavement is very much present and obvious in its experience, or a devotee with regard to the God, the devotion to God. So there are different meanings of the word, but I would like to dwell upon the second meaning, the idea of being a slave. In the name of God, how these women are enslaved by the patriarchal system, and how there is an exploitation in different ways with different dimensions. Now, I have also showcased here a catalogue of the regional names of the Devadasis. You can find how in the Tamil region they're known as the Devaradiyal, as a Rudraganika, and in Andhra Pradesh they are known as Joginis, in Karnataka as Basabis, and in Kerala and also in Odisha they're known as Maharis, where these are different nomenclature for the Devadasis, which operate in different regions under different names. And I would like to mention the Odisha condition, the context of Odisha, where there is a distinct change in the perception on the Devadasi system over different historic periods, where there were invasions and there was a consequent moral shift in the perception about the Devadasis. You can easily find it out how there were successive raids by the Mughal and Muslim Subedars in the late early 17th to the mid 18th century. And it targeted the Puri temple for plunder, and how the essential services were suspended. And this period of disruption triggered a moral decline. The Maharis, that is the women, Devadasis, were brought out of the temples to perform in royal courts, transforming their sacred status into an association with concubinage. So that was the beginning of the idea of concubinage, with the dissolution of the temple management system and the invasion by the Mughal and Muslim Subedars. And there was also economic destitution, which we can find historically, how the Maharis were compensated by rent-free land grants, and they were given a share of the temple food called kei, but they received no other money. Okay, and they suffered severe financial strain. Okay, and they had to lead a very impoverished lifestyle. So to maintain their hereditary service lines, okay, the aging Maharis resorted to purchasing or adopting daughters, okay, from impoverished families. So in this way, the practice continued. The practice of concubinage continued in a different form with a different manifestation. In fact, I have referred to the contemporary Odisha context as well, and I have referred to the Odisha situation because there are many overlaps between Odisha and Bengal. And when I will talk about the Nachnis, you can understand how the Odia situation is also very relevant to institute a comparative study with the Nachnis of Bengal. So modern imminent extinction is there. There is a threat to extinction. Only a very tiny number of elderly Maharis remain active in Puri. And we find they have their adopted daughters married out of the system and pursuing secular jobs. Okay, and the two aging Maharis are there, Harapriya and Kokila Prabha, who have petitioned to the government and temple administrators for financial aid to keep the heritage alive. So there is a kind of economic dependency, which is quite aggravated in the recent times. And it is probably the only lifeline to sustain the tradition, to keep it going. And I have also referred to the Devadasi system in Andhra Pradesh, particularly in the Telangana region, where Devadasi system was manifested as a Jogini or Vasabi system, pardon the spelling error, while Devadasi translates as servant of God or slave to God. The practice transformed into a caste-bound institution that subjected Dalit girls and women to ritual dedication alongside lifelong social and sexual exploitation. In fact, it happened in the case of Nachni as well, where we find that the victims are mostly from the Dalit and Adivasi background. And there is a saga of interminable suffering on the basis of their caste origin and also due to their tribal origin. So it's the beginning there. And in rural Telangana, the system functioned as a localized Jogini system tied to the caste hierarchies and village goddess worship rather than temple arts. And young girls, usually before or around puberty, were ceremonially married to local goddesses like Ellamma, Pochamma, or Yellamma. So though framed as devotion or vow fulfillment, dedications were heavily driven by social pressure, poverty, superstition, or coercion. Okay, so in most of the cases, it was not a voluntary and spontaneous dedication to the local gods and goddesses. So the caste-based targeting was there, and the practice was overwhelmingly forced upon girls from the scheduled castes, that is Dalit communities, the ex-untouchable communities, while upper caste families never dedicated their daughters. And there was also the practice of isolation and abuse, dedicating Dalit girls as Joginis, institutionalized sexual access to their bodies, while preserving upper caste marriage boundaries and social purity. So the purity pollution binary was always there, and the Dalit girls were sacrificed, okay, whereas the social purity was maintained through the upper caste girls. The Jogini was forbidden from marrying inside or outside her community, leaving her isolated and stigmatized. And beyond these ceremonies, they also faced severe sexual exploitation. Lacking a husband's protection, they were subjected to informal, legally unrecognized sexual relationships with dominant caste men. These men carried zero legal or social responsibility, leaving the women to bear the social stigma alone. In fact, this was part of many Dalit women's autobiographies. If you read the autobiographies by Bama or Urmila Power, you will easily understand how there is a very vicious mechanism of severe sexual exploitation, which happens due to the lack of the protection from the husband, and there is no permission to marry within or outside the caste. So Yoginis held an ambiguous status, neither recognized as married women, widows, nor typical unmarried women, which stripped them of patriarchal respect and caused lifelong social insecurity. So children born to them faced intense discrimination. Many inherited their mother's caste status and economic vulnerability, perpetuating systemic marginalization. In fact, this is quite apparent in the life story of the Nachnis as well. So the patriarchal control, the system reflected male-dominated control over female sexuality and reproduction. By marrying a girl to a deity, society blocked her from mortal marriage while granting men sexual access. So in the colonial era, the rural Yogini system persisted in Telangana. In post-independence, there was the Andhra Pradesh Devadasis Prohibition of Dedication Act. It was enacted to criminalize the practice, ban the dedication ceremonies, and penalize participants or facilitators. And there was also a provision to habilitate women through welfare schemes. But dedications continued secretly at night during ritual rural festivals due to several factors. And what are the factors? Deep-seated fears of divine wrath and entrenched traditions. There was also the authority of local caste leaders. The element of coercion was there. Poverty, lack of education, and minimal awareness of legal rights, and also what we call human rights. Rehabilitation challenges, including inadequate funding, social stigma, and a lack of sustainable jobs. In fact, in the case of some denotified and nomadic tribes, we also find how there were stigmas of untouchability and criminality. So they had to bear the brunt of twin curses of untouchability and criminality. So the Devadasi system constitutes structural violence that violates the constitutional guarantees that we find in the Indian Constitution, right to equality, which also includes dignity, bodily autonomy, and freedom from exploitation. And while minor dedications breach the child protection and anti-trafficking laws. And there was also public testimonies and media coverage that highlighted the severe psychological trauma. In fact, there are many unpublished oral testimonies of the Yoginis and also of the Nachnis of Purulia, Jharkhand and Odisha, where they have confessed, they have openly talked about their severe psychological trauma due to constant exposure to this kind of exploitation, especially the sexual exploitation, social isolation, and health risks faced by these women. And this includes a high vulnerability to sexually transmitted infections, diseases like HIV, due to a lack of healthcare access and low negotiation power in relationships. So a clear distinction exists between the temple traditions, where some Devadasis had property rights to a certain extent and artistic status, and on the other hand, the rural Yogini system, which has always been defined by exploitation. And here I have given the human rights framework from the global perspective, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and how there is a constant violation of the articles included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Also, there is a violation of the conventions on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. There is also violation of the conventions on the rights of the child. Okay, so if we look at the different Devadasis of different age groups, of different sexes, okay, of different orientations, we find that there are violations at different levels, with different dimensions, and also with different social repercussions. And I have also talked about slavery, and especially sexual slavery, which is applicable to the plight of the Devadasis. And in my discussion here, in my later discourse upon the Nachnis, where we find that there are different levels of experience of economic and sexual slavery, where we find how there is the occupation of the female body without consent, and how there is the body is being commodified and controlled by the patrons, by the patriarchal forces, how there is economic coercion, and how there is an instinctive inability to refuse sexual access due to several factors, okay, and how it constitutes the idea of modern slavery. So now I come to the core part of my presentation, the Nachnis of Purulia. They are also found in the neighboring districts in the states of Jharkhand and Odisha. In fact, in a broader sense, in the entire eastern India. So Nachnis of Purulia district in West Bengal and some other regions of Jharkhand and Odisha are traditional Dalit performers. There are a few Adivasi performers as well, often compared to Devadasis due to their long semi-religious devotion to art. They were not directly dedicated to the gods or goddesses in the temple, but they were actually dedicated to the idea, the lore of Radha Krishna. Okay, and all of them practiced, Vaishnavism. So the initial pull came from the Vaishnavite cult. Okay, so that there was that kind of semi-religious devotion to art. However, they experienced social repression and stigma as fallen women. And conventionally, they have to partner with a male musician, the Rasik. The Rasik is the protector. In fact, the Rasik is the person who provides security, but who actually takes away her freedom. Okay, and it's a kind of protection that comes at a heavy price. Okay, and the Rasik has his own family and children. So this Nachni is kept as a concubine. Okay, and she is an extra. And the Rasik is there to perform the Khemta Nach and the Jhumur songs. These are all very popular folk renditions on mostly the themes of Radha Krishna Leela, okay, the love relationships of Radha and Krishna, okay, which is contextualized in the modern situation of love of young men and women, okay, and how it takes a new form, a new avatar. And this relationship is central to their survival, offering a form of protection, but also culminating in a very complex and exploitative social engineering. Despite being committed rural artists, Nachnis are often humiliated as social outcasts because they come from the Dalit families. They are from the ex-untouchable communities, similar to the historical treatment of the courtesans, although their plight is more marginalized in the contemporary contexts. With the lack of traditional patronage from local landlords, many Nachnis now struggle for survival, often performing for poor wages in public forums. So they become public women, because they lose even the patronage of the local landlords and zamindars. The economic dependency, aggravated by the social stigma, would accentuate the experience of humiliation, typical to the state of slavery, where they have absolutely no agents. And Nachnis are mostly lower caste, ex-untouchable Hindu women, including some tribal women, and they represent different subcastes like cobblers, blacksmiths, fishermen and women, and even weavers, okay, domes, and even Santals, the Adivasis. Some of them are sold out by very poor parents, and some others remain unmarried even in their 30s. Some women are victims of human trafficking, and very few accepting the profession spontaneously. So Nachnis face a tragic plight after death. Okay, their dead bodies are tied by ropes and dumped in a garbage heap to atone for their unknown sinful conduct. So they are not even given a decent funeral. That is denied, okay, because they are considered to be polluted and fallen women. So this is a picture of a Nachni who has experienced this humiliation and who lives in a house, a dilapidated house, and in very, very intense form of poverty, okay, chill penury, okay, but she has to continue her trade. So the Nachni historians, the performance historians claim that Nachni may be as old as the Devadasi dance form of ancient India. However, Devadasi dance was created in the temple precincts of Hindus, whereas Nachni originated in the courts and entertainment halls of the kings, like the Baiji dance of classical music or the classical music gharanas. Okay. The kings were the patrons of the Nachni performance tradition. If we go down the history of this Nachni tradition, the Permanent Settlement Act decreed by Lord Cornwallis in 1793, many kings and landlords lost their kingdom and became incapable of patronizing the Nachnis. Earlier, feudal lords of Kashipur, Satdihi, Jamtara, Bagmundi, and other places of Purulia and Jharkhand used to keep Nachnis in their palaces and forts. Okay, here is a statistical representation of which king retained how many Nachnis. Okay, these were all, tribal kings. Okay, like Chun Singh Manki, he was a Mundari king. Okay, he had 5 Nachnis. Upen Singh Manki, 5 Nachnis. Olebar Singh Manki, 3 Nachnis. In fact, Nachnis moved out of palaces and started joining public shows for bare survival. The new patrons were known as Rasiks. In Purulia, they were mostly from Mahato and Sardar castes and tribes. Mahatos belong to the Kudmi caste. Okay, and the Kudmis earlier claimed themselves as Khatriyas, but now the Kudmis claim themselves as Adivasis. So there had been great movement in India regarding the tribal status of the Kudmi Mahatos very recently. So Rasiks kept Nachnis for earning money. The Jhumur singer and an unemployed youth, Binoy Maji, I give you a case study, of Paramdi village in Bundi police station of Ranchi district, kept Nachni Pushpa for earning first money. So upper caste Brahmins also began to keep Nachnis, especially the poor upper caste Brahmins. Okay, you found such depiction of a poor, very poor upper caste Brahmin in Vibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay's novel, Pather Pachali. Okay, Harihar Bandyopadhyay was upper caste Brahmin, but he was very poor. Okay, so what happened that even in Purulia, the upper caste poor Brahmins like Rishikesh Mukherjee of Bagmundi police station kept Saraswati Singh, okay, a Munda tribal woman, as his kept Nachni. So no accounts are opened in the name of the Nachnis. Look at the economic dependency. No accounts are opened in the name of the Nachnis, either in banks or in post offices. Okay, so they are thus victims of economic slavery. And I have referred to this book, the Nachni Chronicles, For your use, future use, if you are interested, you can look at this book, A Photographic Journey of Resilient Rhythms, published by the Folk and Tribal Cultural Center, Department of Information and Cultural Affairs, Government of West Bengal. In fact, there is a damaged statue of the Jhumur singer and Nachni Guru, Raghunandan Kumar. And I have quoted from one very famous danseuse, in fact, the innovator of the Brotochari dance form in Bengal during the freedom struggle, Guru Sadaya Dutt, from his book, The Folk Dance of Bengal, where he talks about the importance of dance as a very faithful record of its cultural link with the past and with the roots of its spiritual life. But in the case of the Nachni, it's also a great reminder of that decadent and degenerated spiritual life of a community. And you look here in the next slide, the musicians and singers who offer a prayer before they start their session, the performance session, usually around 10 p.m. at night and ends early next morning. Okay, and several musical instruments are played. But it's basically about enticing the audiences who are actually contributing to the survival of the Nachnis, because it's about generating public funds. Okay, it's about crowdfunding. Okay, the form survives through crowdfunding, and there are villagers in Purulia district. Look at the next slide. It's enjoying a late night performance. And unfortunately, many of these Nachnis are also available, for, pleasure hunting after the public performances. So it's also part of their survival mechanism, where we are talked about the Nachni Shal or the Akhada, and where the stage-like setting is there. And the late night carnival often takes many devious turns with people who can spend, always having the upper hand. So in rural areas, people often stay up late at night to watch Nachni and Jhumur performances as a form of entertainment after a hard day's work. Over time, the themes of Jhumur songs have expanded beyond traditional subjects to include social and personal issues such as drought, floods, love, separation, dowry, and politics. So it is a desperate bid on the part of the Jhumur lyricists to stay updated, to stay relevant to the changing discourses of society. And look at another slide. It tells about a very, very unfortunate scenario where there are no takers. Okay, late night performance where domestic dark parades makes it quite surreal, the performance. There are no humans, only the non-humans. So I have also talked about some of the Jhumur songs and their English renderings to make you understand how the entire chemistry of the Rasik and Nachni develops, and how there is a social dynamic of attracting the audience with a description of the contemporary perceptions upon the Nachni performance. It's in Bengali. I provide you with the English rendering of this song. Purulia district promotes Bai dance. They popularly describe Nachni as Bai dance. With fairs and festivals being organized in every nook and corner, people of all ages, young boys and old men, throng the performance circle in search of vulgar entertainment. The musical accompanists are complementing the body tunes with fierce, Maenad-like movements. The groundlings are heavily drunk, and their gaze on female body slips into uncontrollable, furtive glances. The lyricist Rohin Mahato plays the role of a modest, unappreciative audience who alienates himself from the public leer. So the Jhumur artist is actually an isolated observer, okay, observing the gradual decadence in public taste and public reactions. I include here another Jhumur song. It's about love, okay, and different ways of enticing the male lover and the impact of the female lover upon the male lover. I provide the English rendering. Oh Nachni, why are you clad in bright green sari, golden bangles, and vermilion mark on forehead? Your black eyelashes with petite eyeliners have captured my mind and soul. Why did you expose your vermilion draped slender legs? Why did you set on fire the vernal nature with your scorching beauty? My mind is steeped in love and longs for your nod to go ahead. Why did you flaunt that killing hairstyle? Why did you set that enticing nose ring and whispered softly into my ears? Your matchless beauty will goad me to self-dissolution by the Hongsheshwar river unless my love is consummated. So it continues in this way, the love lyrics with very candid expression of love between the male lover and the female beloved, the Nachni. I searched for you in vain. The long day waned only to whet the intensity of my desire. Bowery friend of Nachni failed to confess his love. The coyness killed the opportunity. And there is also often traditional renderings from the Radha Krishna Leela, which is taken mostly from Jayadev, Gita Govinda. I provide here one English rendering of a Padabali Kirtan. Sri Radha confides to the messenger of Lord Krishna that the irresistible tune of his flute has made her heart sick with love. The rising surge of melody thrills Radharani, and she almost swoons to death, longing for love. Radha is also troubled by her suspicious sister-in-law, who has put her in house arrest. She finds it difficult to leave her house and enjoy a clandestine meet with Lord Krishna. Okay, so somewhere this trope operates in the life of Nachni as well, where she is the concubine to her Rasik, okay, who has her own family, her own wife, and it talks about an extramarital love, okay, and it talks about the dynamics of desire, which is not approved by society. So this is there. Some similarities are also there. And I have provided with some slides where the Nachni performance starts with an introduction and then moves into devotional renditions. As the music progresses, the rhythms become more vigorous and the dances become more sensual. Okay. And I have referred to some specific case studies. Charubala Kalindi is a veteran Nachni, is seen here performing Jhumur in her village. She's almost 65, but can still perform the dance with great enthusiasm and vigor. And more interestingly, the young women are not joining this trade anymore. Rather, it's the non-tribal, non-Dalit, mainstream women who are learning the art of dance, okay, along with the Jhumur song. And they learn it in some centers, in some workshops. And that creates a huge crisis in the continuity of this tradition. So mostly, these performers are elderly women. Okay, and here Charubala Kalindi got married at the tender age of 16, 17. Her then husband used to beat her. Out of desperation, she left home and took to the path of Nachni. So domestic violence was also a factor, for these women to leave their family and search for a new livelihood. And I have also given here the photograph of another very senior Nachni performer. The very old body of Chepu Kalindi, 60, comes alive as he gets into the act. He jumps up in the air and rolls on the ground with equal ease in a state of ecstasy. And he's a male performer, very, very rare case of a male Nachni as well, where he joins the trade and he has learned the art of dance along with the Jhumur songs. Saraswati Devi, I have referred to her a while ago, a veteran Nachni, and her Rasik Rishikesh Mukherjee, an upper caste Brahmin, Rasik, in their room. So Saraswati Devi, a veteran Nachni, their Mukherjee is a Brahmin, while Saraswati is by birth a Bhumij tribal with the surname Singh Patar, and they got married in Gandharva style. That was not recognized by society. In most of the cases, the Rasik's family stays aloof from the Nachni and never accepts her. The Rasik stays with the Nachni and performs his duty for the family too. Saraswati, though, lives with Rishikesh. She has 2 daughters, both of whom are married. And I have given another case study of Tara Devi, a very senior performer. 30 years back, such things were unimaginable. She now lives along with her Rasik Jagadish's entire family. Tara Devi is getting prepared for the performance. And Tara Devi's Rasik Jagadish is taking care of her dresses. His meticulous care is an object of envy among many dancers. So there is often, many Rasiks who are in high demand. That there could be swapping of Rasiks as well. Some other Nachnis use Rasiks of their peers. And you can find there is a scene where it's a classic case of the male gaze during the preparation of the Nachni for the performance. There are many aloof bystanders. And this is one unique example of Ranjit, who happens to be a transgender Nachni, belongs to the Hijra community. And whenever there is a Bai-Nach program nearby, Ranjit reaches there, dresses and performs as a Nachni. And his case is unique because he is not supported by a traditional Rasik and the family. So he has to live in that community of Hijras, where he is probably supported by a fellow Hijra. And somehow his passion for this art is so intense that she also maintains the rituals essential for the maintenance of the Nachnis. And here I have also referred to one Muslim Nachni, Masura. That is also interesting, who lives with her Rasik, Amrit Mahato, and his wife, Shasta Mahato, in the Chitarpur village, where we find almost an intercommunal pairing, where this form also attracts people from other religion to join this art and to continue this lifestyle. I have given the example of Nachni Bijoli of Kotshila, Purulia. So Nachnis were seen as courtesans or concubines. So they were socially discriminated. And after death, I have already mentioned that their dead bodies are dumped. They are not cremated or buried. There are some, silver linings now, because children from the Nachni community, some of them can now go to school and interact with their classmates. But the stigma is still there, and you will find it in the oral testimonies of many senior Nachnis, how their children are facing discrimination in school. As you know, it happened in the case of many Dalits, and you would come across in many Dalit autobiographies. Even in the autobiography of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, you will come across the discriminatory practices, especially in the school premises. Charubala Kalindi, I have given that example with a malnourished body, proves to be the first grade performer. Okay, and she holds the responsibility to provide meal for her Rasik's huge family. She is the only bread earner for the entire family. Okay. Sheila Devi is another example. Okay, Vimala Devi, okay, got the Sangeet Mahashamman Award. Okay, a proud recipient of the government award. Okay, but these are all very recent developments. But these awards actually do not take away the stigma. Okay, they do not take away, okay, the discrimination, okay, which has been there in the societal perception. And I would also like to mention probably the most celebrated Nachni of the present times, Postubala Devi, who started her career as a Nachni in 1985. She belonged to an abysmally poor family where it was difficult to get 2 square meals. She had many siblings, had no access to the basic amenities, yet her parents could not accept her status, okay, as a concubine, could not accept it. And she found a protector and lover in Vijay, okay, Vijay Pramanik, who happened to be her Rasik, Postubala and Vijay. It was a very odd match and completely disowned by her family. But still they paired up, and Postubala earned some awards. Very recently, her Rasik passed away. And when the Rasik passes away, the plight of the Nachni is even more deplorable. More deplorable because there is no protector. Okay, there is no person who would give her the artistic support. Okay, and the entire programming, the entire dynamics is severely affected. So that is something which we find in the case of the Nachnis. Now, we had some extended interviews with Postawala Devi, where she was making her own observations on the future of the Nachni tradition. In fact, she confided to us that there has been a steady downfall, especially after the COVID-19, a steady downfall in the organization of Nachni performances, even in public forums. Okay, and young women are not showing interest. I have already mentioned it. There is a debate on prioritizing the Jhumur songs, okay, or the dance movements. So there is a debate that there should be greater emphasis upon popularizing the Jhumur songs, and this dance performance should not be, in a way, focused in a prominent manner. So the internal dissents and political meddlings are also impacting their earning of funds. Okay, because the earlier leftist regime completely derecognized the practice of Nachni forms. Okay, although some of the erstwhile leaders of the communist regime used to keep Nachnis. Okay, so they used to have them, but still in the public discourse, there was a total derecognition of the Nachni form, the Nachni performance tradition. Chinta Singh Muda, another veteran Nachni, the Adivasi Nachni artist, belongs to the Munda community, is the oldest performer from the village of Suisa. We visited that village several times. She started her profession when she was 14 years old and has been associated with it for 63 years. And like Postubala Devi, she also suffered ostracization from her family to the extent that she could not accept any invitation near her ancestral village due to that stigma. So back when she started her career as a Nachni performer, performers were paid only 50, 60 rupees for a show. So she could not revisit her ancestral village, as you would find it in the autobiography of some Dalit writers. Okay, especially Sharan Kumar Limbale's. Okay, Akarmashi, the outcast. If you read, you will find that Limbale was debarred from re-entering his native village because he wrote many things about okay, his mother and daughter and sister, okay, which were extremely unacceptable to the community. So although the profession of Nachni has now been socially accepted to a certain extent, the Nachnis of Suisa do not receive much attention, apart from getting 1,000 rupees monthly in the form of a dole. So they should have an artist's card and they will be given a dole of 1,000 rupees. And they do not get other aids from the NGOs. And even after performing for 5 days at the tribal zamindar's place during the pujas, they only received 1,500 rupees. So Nachnis like Chinta Singh Muda perform the art more dexterously, and they have a greater command over the Jhumur song renditions, and they are also more skilled in maintaining the perfect harmony between the song and dance sequence, and they have continued to practice the Darbari Jhumur with the true taste of Adi Rasa. Okay, so they are the true practitioners of the Nachni form. Here is a picture of the Nachni Chinta Singh Muda with her Rasik, Rampada Singh Muda. So they don't get any help, and Chinta Singh Muda is not very hopeful about the future prospect of Nachni profession. Although the government attempts to rescue the Darbari Jhumur tradition, it is mostly confined to the urban space. Urban space in the sense in the holding of the workshops, in the setting up of certain centers, where these margins are always and already excluded. So although the government attempts to rescue the Darbari Jhumur tradition, it's mostly confined to the urban space, and rural artists are left in the lurch. Anyway, we interviewed the chairman of the Kurmali Academy there in Purulia, Sunil Mahato, a noted Kurmali expert and a Jhumur lyricist. Okay, he was a political activist, and he noted that the Nachni artists are now in a miserable condition. The Rasik system is no longer approved by the society, and this system of concubinage is completely forbidden. So, according to Mahato, in the workshop organized by the Kurmi Academy and banglanatok.com, that is an NGO, okay, the elderly artists were no match for the younger generation women dancers, because these were mostly, non-tribal, non-Dalit dancers, okay, who were trained in the art, okay, by some artists, okay, who did not belong to the margins. In fact, all their performances were video recorded under many projects, and they learned from those recordings. Okay, and after the recordings, many of these artists were completely forgotten. Okay, so there is always a very sad story of erasure, okay, of memory, and there is always a very sad story of ingratitude, okay, which is very much operative, okay, in the entire discourse of the Nachni performance tradition. So there is a rejection of the elderly artists, and the genesis of the Machani performance tradition, that is another very old, okay, folk performance tradition, is also traced back to the Sri Jagannath temple at Puri. And Nachni tradition somehow relates to the Jagannatha tradition at Puri, okay, because of its devotion to the Radha Krishna lore. Somewhere there is a very extended form of link, and the only difference is how the Devadasis transformed the mode of entertainment into elegant classical forms of dancing, whereas the Nachnis mostly continued a vulgar dance form with an overdose of sensuality. So these are my observations on the current status of the Nachni tradition, the history, the origin and evolution of the Nachni tradition, the identity of the Nachnis, and the way they have to negotiate with different kinds of dependency, okay, just considered under different parameters. And so there is graded inequality in this indigenous Kudmi community with regard to the treatment of the hapless Nachni women by the creamy layer of Kudmi society. Okay, I have already told you that the Mahatos, the Mahatos, Zamindars, and later they were many political leaders. They were in the limelight, but they completely derecognized the Nachni tradition and yet kept some Nachnis, as their concubines. So we have seen that the glamour and glitz of the entertainment industry seem to have eclipsed the traditional freshness of some significant folk forms. And we are into the 21st century culture of DJ, of disc jockey. You find here the visible DJ signage symbolizes the growing influence of the DJ culture, which is often perceived as contributing to the erosion of the traditional Nachni performance tradition. Look at the enthusiastic performers accompanying the main performers during a Nachni performance. And they are paying generously to Nachni performers. So sticking currency notes to their sari with safety pins. So in a way, appreciating in a very, very commodified sense of the term. So this is my conclusion to this presentation, where we find that there had been a distinct degeneration in the Nachni performance tradition. The original inspiration that drew from Joydev Gita Govinda, and that also banked upon the Darbari Jhumur tradition, which flourished in the courts of the zamindars and kings, ultimately degenerated into a very public form of consumption, a commodification of a form, which was consumed by the public, who didn't understand the actual nuances of the original art form, and who actually, and gleefully just banked upon the vulgar manifestations, which were inevitable, considering the threats to their survival, threats to the art form. So the Nachnis are valued for the entertainment they provide, but the society does not want to treat the women with respect. And the prostitutes of Darbar have tried to motivate them into forming a community. The Nachnis have understood the value of forming a community for themselves in order to gain respect from society. So this is all about my performance. Thank you.